far from it. I think that in 700 pages, what you've got is a very mixed bag. There were criticisms of me, there were criticisms of Mr McGrail, criticisms of the RGP. I recognise those criticisms, and I said I would consider them and reflect on them very carefully. But I asked people also, when I said I was sorry if I'd failed at that time in any respect, giving rise to these criticisms, to put those things in the context of what was happening in 2020. And I talked about COVID and the fact that we were then starting the process of the negotiation. Those very months, the £500 million of debt that we were incurring in order to keep our economy going, pay people who were not at work at the time. So I think, if you look at the whole run of this 700-page report, there are things I find very positive in it, and there are things, of course, which I find are very negative in it. Some of them are the sharp criticisms of me, which I talked about in my ministerial statement.
They're very sharp. In fact, the report accuses you of crossing the line of several grossly improper attempts to interfere with the live criminal investigation, of improper disclosure of information, of misleading the police authority and using its processes to bring about Mr McGrail's dismissal for your own reasons. Will you be resigning?
Of course not. I'll be taking issue with some of those, potentially, as I've said. I'm considering. I'll be looking at the detail of what it is has been said in that report, which is inherently contradictory. There's some parts of the report that contradict each other. But let's be very clear about what happened here and what the report tells you. To summarize it, the report tells you that in the end, it says I delayed in some respects, etc. I've got a busy job, a very busy schedule to attend to in order to deliver the things that you and the people of Gibraltar asked me to deliver on. There were 5 witness statements, but I gave all of my WhatsApps, all of my electronic communications. You know today, if you give up your WhatsApps, you're giving up your soul almost. I did a full striptease in front of the inquiry. And yet, I was being judged against Mr McGrail and against the RGP, who failed to provide all of the disclosure that they had to provide. So you're not actually balancing accurately when you look at the disclosure I provide versus the disclosure that was provided by Mr McGrail and the RGP, which was failing to give everything that they had and should have given. If they had given everything that they had and should have given, perhaps the conclusions might have been slightly different. Instead, they get off with being rapped on the knuckles for not having given the information that they should have given. And I get, of course, criticised for some of the things that are contained in my electronic communications. I understand that. I'm going to reflect on that. I've said that there may be a potential for me to challenge some of those things, but I'm not going to make a decision about that now. I've got advice on that, but I'm going to consider it carefully.
Chief Minister, but you call them lapses. I mean, they're hardly lapses, aren't they?
Well, look, one man's failure is another man's lapse, I can tell you. I think that in the context of what we're dealing with in 2020, some of the things that I was going through and dealing with on behalf of all of us were, as I said in my statement this afternoon, the hardest and darkest times I have ever been through as Chief Minister. And in the context of that, we were also having to deal with what has also been found by the inquiry to be my genuine belief that I was being lied to my face, in my office, by the then Commissioner of Police.
And it was your genuine belief, but yet the chairman finds he did not lie.
But it's hugely important that you also remind people that it's not just that it was my genuine belief, that the chairman found that it is my genuine belief. In the same way as he finds that he doesn't believe that Mr McGrail lied, he also believes that I genuinely believed I was lied to. That's important because subjectively, that's what I felt, and that's how I made all the decisions that I made thereafter, on the basis of having been misled by the most senior police officer in Gibraltar in my office, something which is, in my view, not acceptable. You'll recall that during the course of the inquiry hearings, I referred to the things that Andy Burnham was saying in the United Kingdom, that a public servant should never mislead or lie to a minister. And that was my view then. That remains my view because I still genuinely believe that I was lied to.
Well, there were a couple of things in the report that could lead to you having been angry, to you believing that, as you say, that you'd been lied to, the fact that there was not proper process in the actual search warrant, but yet the chairman says it does not justify interference.
And then he goes on to find that there has been no interference. So, as I say to you, this is a bit of a mixed bag. He finds that I grossly attempted to interfere, something with which I take great issue with. I do not believe that can be the case. I don't think there's any evidence on which you can genuinely make that finding. But at the same time, he also finds that there was no interference, that the police were able to do exactly what they felt in the way that they felt, and that neither I nor anybody else actually interfered with them. That's hugely important.
Not through lack of trying. According to the report, it comes back once and again and again and again. So yes, there was no actual interference, not through lack of trying.
According to the report, in a way that I don't agree it is possible to find on the basis of the evidence. Remember, 38,000 people have heard this evidence and seen it on the national broadcaster. They can see all the documents. There'll be 38,001 opinions. One of them is the opinion of Sir Peter Openshaw, who I respect and I believe has reached what he considers to be the right conclusions. That doesn't mean that they are entirely right. And of course, the way that our system of justice works, even though this is not a court, this is an inquiry, you never have one man making a decision over another. You'll always have the opportunity of appealing those decisions. If you think you're wrong, they're wrong. And this is what I'm going to consider carefully over the holiday period, and whilst I complete my convalescence, so that I make a decision about whether or not to challenge those parts of the report that I consider are extraordinary and not based on evidence or on facts.
You spoke of confidence in our institutions, but how can you call for that now? Do you feel people can trust you after the report?
Of course people can trust me. I have never lied to the people of Gibraltar. I have never misled the inquiry tribunal. I have always told...
You're being accused of having misled the police authority.
The whole truth and nothing but the truth.
You're being accused of having...
No, I'm not being accused.
Well, no, you're being...
There's a finding,
the report, yes.
There was a finding by Mr Justice Openshaw that I misled the GPA because I didn't tell them something else. By omission, right? So I challenged that finding. I don't think it is a finding which is based on the evidence before the tribunal, because you can also see that Joe Benito says that he's aware of the things that I'm talking to him about, etc. So I'm very clear that people can completely trust me. I have never misled the people of Gibraltar, and I never will, because I love Gibraltar. That's why I'm in this job. That's why I do the things I'm doing, and that means never misleading the people of Gibraltar.
Mr Picardo, do you accept that Ian McGrail was forced out?
I accept the finding made by the inquiry that he jumped before he was pushed by the person who could push him, who was the governor, who had very good reasons to lose confidence in Ian McGrail, and that Ian McGrail was lucky that he was not asked to go sooner.
Will the motion now be debated on the 13th of January? That's the next meeting of Parliament.
No, Parliament is coming back on the 13th of January. The first thing that we will do is we will table the report. The law requires us to table the report as soon as practicable, and the first meeting is the 13th of January. The motion is now a government motion. It will go when government motions are dealt with. The first thing we have to deal with is the backlog of questions, and we'll deal with those questions first, and then we'll deal with legislation and then motions.
Would you say, after what's come up, because I'm just trying to find, you actually said at the beginning that the inquiry would find that you acted entirely properly at all times. That's certainly not been the case. So would you say that the inquiry was, from your part, in hindsight, at the very least, perhaps a miscalculation, at the very worst, a mistake?
Well, no, because I think this is only possibly the end of round one. But I'm very clear that actually the inquiry did find that there was no improper interference. So it found that I tried to act improperly, but did not achieve that. Look, anybody who knows me knows that if I try and do something, I get it done. Just that tells you that actually it's very unlikely that I tried to interfere with anything that I wasn't actually able to interfere with in the end. But you asked me whether it's a miscalculation. Let me tell you something that I haven't been able to say before, because the inquiry was ongoing. I met in June 2020 with Ian McGrail. We agreed not to have an inquiry. We agreed that he was going to have £50,000 to pay for the legal fees he'd incurred until then. We left the Rock Hotel agreeing not to do that. He then went to talk to his lawyers and came back and said he wanted £250,000 and an apology instead. He went into this inquiry seeking an apology and damages. He got no recommendation for either from the inquiry tribunal. Perhaps we should both have shaken hands on the £50,000 and saved Gibraltar £8 million.
Should you have?
Yes, absolutely.
You've had the report since the 6th of November. You had to undergo emergency eye surgery. That was 2 weeks ago. We had the inquest, the death at sea inquest, which was, of course, scheduled. We knew when it was going to happen. Why has it taken so long? And do people have a point when they said you tried to bury it with Christmas?
People have absolutely no point. People who say that are the same people who said that the report was going to be redacted, the same people who said that there was interference with the investigation have found now that there wasn't, the same people who want to either be conspiracy theorists or hate me or hate the government and express the hate in that way. As you know, we received the report. It considers a lot of issues about government action, not just about me, but how government does work. We needed to understand it before we could publish it. We set out to, first of all, agree with the chairman how we would publish it, who would have advance notice. That took some time. And immediately that we were going to be prepared to publish. Indeed, we had set a date for publication in early December so that nobody said that it was going to be buried at Christmas. I had the problem that I had, from which I am still recovering. I hope nobody's going to pretend that that wasn't the case. And then we had the Deputy Coroner write to us and ask us to please not disclose it until the jury had returned a verdict. That's why we're here. I'll tell you something, my political calculation, Christine, is it would have been better to do this earlier in December, not later. Now, all that everybody will be talking about over Christmas is the things that are said about me and Ian McGrail in the context of that inquiry report. My political judgment was it would have been better for me to do it earlier in December.
What about with the treaty? Did you try to mask the inquiry report with the treaty?
I'm not trying to mask anything with anything else. The treaty and the inquiry are two completely different things. One is about the future of Gibraltar, the financial stability that we need for our economy and our people and our children. The other is how we dealt with a commissioner of police who, we have been told, in the inquiry that he called for, was lucky that he wasn't asked to resign sooner because of the shockingly bad way in which he was managing the Royal Gibraltar Police, as HMIC report told us in 2020. And I took my eye off the ball there because I was dealing with COVID, saving lives and putting money in people's pockets when they weren't working. You cannot compare the two. They were entirely deconflicted, in my view, in the minds of every Gibraltarian, because although they might happen at around the same time, they are about different things with absolutely different potential consequences.
Chief Minister, the UK press is starting to pick up the story. Of course, there are major players, the Governor, the Chief Minister, Public Office, Commissioner of Police. What do you think this will do to the reputation of Gibraltar? Well,
exactly the same thing that Mr McGrail's lawyers have been doing in the past to the reputation of Gibraltar. His UK lawyer is constantly seeking to put out on social media contact directly with UK newspapers, asking them to carry this story. His Gibraltar lawyers are giving press conferences. They're trying to, for some reason, make this political. Lawyers don't tend to do those things. Lawyers tend to represent their clients. Look at the lawyers for all the other parties in respect of the McGrail inquiry. Where are their comments on things? And yet, a couple of lawyers are trying to get this into the newspapers because by doing so, it gets their names into the newspapers. They don't care that Gibraltar's reputation is going to be shredded in the process. That's why I've asked them today, and I asked them again tonight on Newswatch, please make all the international reports attacking me rather than attacking Gibraltar. I don't mind. I've said I'm going. I've said I'm not standing for election again. Make the attacks on me.
I have to pick you up on that one.
Let's leave Gibraltar's institutions and Gibraltar out of it.
I have to pick you up on that one. In a few months, you said.
Sorry?
You said in a few months.
Well, there's about 23, 22 months left before the next general election.
That's not a few months, Chief Minister. Thank you very, very much for joining me in the studio tonight.
I know it hasn't around for more than 3, if that's what you mean.
That is exactly what I meant.
I'll be around for more than 3, maybe to some people's chagrin.